Welcome to Beyond the Rig. Today we're talking to Adam Miller, CFO of KnightSwift Holding Company and President of Swift Transportation. He'll be discussing with us autonomous vehicles, the state of the industry as a whole, as well as where we might see KnightSwift in the future.
Let's get trucking.
This is Beyond the Rig.
Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Rig. I'm Linda Dominy, and if you notice, sitting next to me is not Will Phipps.
A much better looking version of Will Phipps.
Who knows where Will's at?
That's debatable. But
I think Will is on vacation again. He's always on vacation. So next to me is Brett Stabler. Some of you remember him from a prior episode.
I've done a few. It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you back with me. You did the radio show with us.
Did the radio show. I've done a few podcasts. I feel like I get roped into a lot of things. The last thing they wanted me to do was Santa Claus. I had to tell them no.
I'm upset about that.
Okay. Let's move on then.
You want to welcome our next host?
Yeah, well, today we're excited to have Adam Miller with us. Adam is the CFO of KnightSwift Trucking or Transportation. He is also the president of Swift and oversees all of our operations over there. In the words of our CEO, Dave Jackson, and I quote him, Adam is wicked smart. So we are pumped to have Adam here with us today.
Welcome, Adam.
yeah, well, appreciate being here. I think those words are maybe a little more generous than they should be. But hey, I'm excited about being here. I've seen several of the podcasts you've done, and hey, look forward to getting into it.
So I'm going to tell a story about Adam. I started in, I don't even remember. I think it was like 2015-ish or so. It was in April. And then we had a Christmas party in December. And so I got invited to come to the Christmas party. And I had very little interaction with Adam, just minimal at the time. But I'm from Texas. In Texas, we're huggers. That's what we do. So we're leaving for the night. And Adam's saying his goodbyes as we're walking out the door. And I realize I'm in mid-hug with the CFO. And I realize what I'm doing. And so now my head is near his ear, and I'm like, I know it's awkward. Just go with it. I'm a hugger.
Right into his ear, huh?
Yeah, it's fine. I don't mind a hug. It's good.
Adam gave her one of these.
Adam's like, okay.
I'm like,
but I'm a hugger.
easy. But
Walks
no.
outside and explains to his wife, I have no idea who that was. She must be new. Let's just keep walking.
Just keep going. Pretend like that didn't happen. But yeah, then when I got outside, I said to my husband, I can't believe I just did that. But I don't know how not to do that. It's just a natural
I
thing.
actually remember that, but it didn't feel awkward.
No?
Yeah,
Well,
that
I
was
remember
kinda
saying, I
natural.
know.
Yeah.
I remember saying, I know it's awkward. Just go with it. I'm a hugger. So, but today we're going to, I just had to share that because I thought that was pretty funny. I always think about that when I'm hugging somebody else because I know that you're not supposed to do that. Today we're going to talk to Adam about, you went on a ride along, which I'm super excited to get into. I can't wait to hear how that experience went with you and the driver. We're also going to talk about something that's on everybody's mind. As a matter of fact, I just had a driver in my office yesterday talking about autonomous trucks.
Yeah,
I don't know anybody that's not on their minds. That's a huge topic right now.
Yeah, for sure. And then, of course, the future of KnightSwift.
Sure.
All right, you ready?
Where do you want to start?
Let's dig into it. I say we start and we just get to know Adam Miller.
Sure.
So, tell us, how did you start here with us in the beginning?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona. Kind of lived in quite a few of the little towns around Phoenix, but native here, second generation. Not too many second generation folks in Phoenix. So went to Arizona State University.
Go Devils.
Go Devils, yeah. Hoping we can pull together a win here in our bowl game coming up in Vegas.
Yeah.
Going against Wisconsin.
It would be a good win.
Keeping expectations low.
You got to keep them very low if you're an ASU fan.
Right. And so I graduated with an accounting degree. And not that I necessarily wanted to be an accountant. I just felt like, I was in business school, and that was one of the degrees that was a little more challenging to get, and I think maybe opened up more doors for you coming out of school. And I was looking to get on with maybe some of the large accounting firms. But it was actually the year I graduated was the year that Enron went bankrupt, and Arthur Andersen, the audit firm, collapsed as a result of that.
Right.
And so the market was filled with accountants looking for jobs, right? And so me working at an audit firm wasn't in the cards at that time. So started from just kind of square one and said, hey, let's look at the newspaper. Yeah, we still looked at the newspaper then for jobs, but 20 years ago. And had a few interviews, didn't have any luck, and found Knight Transportation, the newspaper. And it was a job collecting on our receivables. So working with our customers to ensure we're getting paid for the services that we provide. Had an interview done at Buckeye facility, and they hired me, I think the next day. So didn't know. I figured I would just get in with what I thought was a good company and see where it took me, right? Didn't think I'd be here 20 years later, right, in the role that I'm in today. But it's been a wonderful experience. It was a company that was rapidly growing, and you had leadership that was willing to take bets on people, right? Despite their tenure, despite their age, they were willing to put people that they thought were high caliber into roles and opportunities that they thought they could excel in. Right. And so I had a lot of opportunities to work in different departments. So like I said, I started in receivables, and then I went into accounting, realized accounting was a little less activity than in receivables, and you didn't talk to as many people. So that was okay for a while, and I liked doing it. But about a year into it, I got tapped on the shoulder. This was by Dave Jackson, who was a CFO at the time. Said, hey, do you want to run our payroll department? And I'd never spent one day in payroll, didn't know really much about it, but figured, yeah, why not, right? And so I got to work with our payroll department and kind of streamline processes, but more importantly, got to work with all of our drivers, right? Like the office side of it was, it was pretty straightforward, but working with driver pay, I mean, that never stopped, right? And I think every day, every phone call was really an opportunity to solve a problem, to really help one of our drivers who just needed further explanation or needed, to solve an issue that he or her had on their payroll, which obviously is extremely important to them. And this is when, again, we were still in the Buckeye terminal, and so drivers would come in. We were right there next to operations, so a lot of our activity was done face-to-face. That's awesome. And I think that was even better. So that was one of the best experiences. You got to learn a lot about the company. You learned about everything that can go wrong with a load, which typically would impact either receivables, collecting from a customer, or a driver's payroll. Right. And so for me to be able to help improve processes, put things in place that helped alleviate some of those problems, alleviate some of the stresses was one of the most rewarding positions I've had at the organization. And then following my stint in payroll, I was a controller for a subsidiary that we had called Knight Refrigerated that we started, I think, in 2004, if I remember. We made an acquisition of a trucking company up in Idaho Falls called Morgan Edwards. And so we needed to kind of build an accounting group around that. So I had an opportunity to do that and was in that position for, I think, like 5 or 6 years. Oh, wow. And then one day, Kevin Knight came in and said he wanted to make some changes in the organization. And part of that change was he wanted Dave Jackson to move on to be the president of the company. And so they needed a new CFO. And they were crazy enough to give me that opportunity. So I think I officially became the CFO in 2012. Was probably on tryouts for the first year to make sure I didn't screw too much up. And so been in that function since then. But one thing that changed was when we merged with Swift. Right. And so that really was a significant change to our business, right? Because you had Swift that was 4 times the size of Knight, and you had leadership that was exiting at the Swift business. And so Kevin Knight was going to play a big role early on in the integration, and he asked if I would go with him, along with Kevin Quast, and then a handful of other leaders. And so I retained my title as the CFO of the holding company, KnightSwift Transportation, still have that today, but got very involved in the Swift business and very involved with trying to drive improvements, performance, working closely with the team there. And as of last year, I became the president of Swift, so I have responsibility for that, but still work very closely with all of our different brands. When we make acquisitions, very involved with helping integration and to ensure that we keep the culture intact, we keep brands intact, but we leverage what value we can bring, being part of a larger organization.
Right. That's awesome.
Quick question just to kind of piggyback off that. So early on, when you guys would acquire companies, you would kind of meld them in to the culture of Knight, and they would be called Knight, and they would become Knight over time. And now lately, when we see you have these acquisitions, we don't do that anymore. They stay their separate entities. So what thought process went into that? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. So our strategy, you're right, from the early 2000s was, hey, you buy a smaller company and you kind of turn it into a Knight terminal, right? And you build efficiencies around them. You take over some of the processes that they have from a back office standpoint, put them into your market. If that worked okay. I mean, I think we probably lost some employees that we wish we would have kept through that process, both non-drivers and drivers. And so what changed was we bought a company called Bar None in 2014. And they had a very strong culture. And they had a great leadership team that wasn't ownership. So they were staying on and really wanted to continue to run the company. And that's when we changed our strategy. We felt like, hey, we have a great team here. Let's not disrupt it. Let's just see what we can do behind the scenes to help them. Let's let them keep their brand. Let's keep the leadership in place, support them any way we can, and see how that works instead.
Right.
And it's worked phenomenally. Like if you go into the Bar None building, you wouldn't see a Knight logo, a Swift logo. You wouldn't see any. You would just know it's Bar None. And the leadership is intact there. But we work very closely together. We leverage synergy opportunities, market opportunities, IT infrastructure. There's a lot of things that we do to help them. But for customer facing, for driver facing, it's independent. And they have performed incredibly. And so we thought this is maybe a better way to approach acquisitions or mergers. And so that's the tactic we've used on a go-forward basis. And I think it's important because there's a lot of trucking companies, transportation companies that still have a very strong founder presence. And a lot of these founders want their people to have opportunities. They want the legacy to continue. That's very important for them versus just who's going to write me the biggest check for the company. And so this approach has allowed us to probably acquire companies that we otherwise would not have been able to if they felt they were just going to be folded in to a larger brand, a larger company, and their people wouldn't have opportunities to continue to develop the legacy that they started. Right. And hey, that is very different. It's harder to execute, but I believe is a competitive advantage for us. So we'll continue to do that on the companies that we purchase. Yeah.
Very cool.
That's a great question. Well, hey, I would like to get back to the merger. How exciting was that? I remember, when it first started, right? It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of interesting things going on, especially considering that you had Knight, who was once in Swift, who then were no longer in Swift, and now they're back with Swift, but now together. So tell us what it's like to be a part of that.
Terrifying. It was a wild time, right? And so I remember the day that we actually agreed on terms. We had Gary Knight, one of our founders and our vice chairman, who came into my office and said, hey, we're going to get this thing done. I think we're at terms. So, hey, we got to make sure we're ready to move forward. And then 45 minutes later came in and said, it's off. We're not doing it. Just get back to just focus on Knight. Don't even worry about it. Just take it out of your mind, right? Okay. And then 30 minutes later, he came in and says, all right, deal's done. All right, we're ready to go. So, that's how fluid the situation was. You can imagine the emotions of, okay, it's going to change pretty dramatically, what my life is going to be like, right? And so, it was very stressful. And it's stressful at work, stressful at home. I was going to change where I was working. I was leaving not permanently, but my office was going to move, and I was leaving a place I was very comfortable with. I worked at Knight at that point 15 years and knew everybody and worked closely with everybody and really had great friends.
Yeah.
And then I was going to a company that had been our competitor for years, and they didn't know how I was going to be received.
Right.
Right. And I remember the first day I was there, and I had a little line of people ready to resign the day we closed. And it was, stressful. And hey, a lot of those people left that weren't going to be on board with some of the things we were trying to accomplish. So it was the best at that point. But gosh, I'll tell you, the people there that are still there were so welcoming. We're so open-minded. And one of my goals was just to come in there and just build relationships, build some goodwill, because I knew there was going to be hard decisions that were going to have to be made down the road. And you wanted people to realize that you were doing what we thought was in the best interests of the company, not with a personal agenda, but they were going to be involved and they were going to have say in how we direct the company.
Right.
But it was going to be different than what they were accustomed to. And it couldn't have gone any better. Not to say there weren't bumps along the way, challenges along the way, certainly. But hey, there always is, right? No matter what you're dealing with. But it's been probably one of the most rewarding things I've gone through, and it's great to see the Swift team see great success, right? And it's also great to see some of these leaderships connect with our other brands, right? And hey, we could be unique, but we can also be connected.
Yeah.
Right. And it's great to keep that brand identity.
Right.
We can take different approaches to different topics, to different issues, and we can learn from each other. But at the same point in time, we're part of KNX. We're part of KnightSwift Transportation, and we all want to be successful. It's great that you have some competition too. And hey, there's times where one's doing better than the other, and we learn from it. Right. And then, you see one step above the other, and hey, then now you got to figure out, what they've done and how you react to that. So that's been great. And it's one of those things you just never knew how it was going to play out, but
sure.
Ultimately it landed really well. And I'm excited to continue to be with Swift, working with them, but also working with the entire KnightSwift team and all the different brands that we work with, and the recent acquisitions we've had with some of the LTL providers, AAA Cooper back in July, and then Midwest Motor Express just recently here. Yeah. And, working with them on building out how synergies can work, how you can connect teams, taking a playbook that we used in the KnightSwift merger and applying it to other companies and seeing success from that as well.
That's awesome.
It's one of those things where it doesn't, some of these playbooks, it doesn't matter if it's trucking company, it could be a pizza parlor, right? It's going to work no matter what, because it's about people doing the right thing, connecting, getting input, and working together towards a common goal.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. In fact, I remember when that acquisition was taking place, or that merger with Swift. We got called in. I don't know if you were there or not, Linda. You may have been, but we got called in like on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, I was there.
And there was a group of us. We're sitting down, and Kevin Knight comes in and starts to explain what was going on and how this was looking. And I remember him talking. I remember thinking first, well, my goodness, there's been we know the history of the Knights working with Swift over the years, and then some of that little bad blood, and maybe some of it still might have existed in certain cases. And I remember thinking, well, this ought to be interesting. And then Kevin started talking about the potential down the road of what this can do for our company as a whole if it's done right and if it's successful. And we've seen just this past year what we've been able to do with, to Adam's point, the acquisition of AAA Cooper and some of these others that we probably wouldn't have been able to do without Swift.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think having Swift part of KNX is a huge deal for us, right? It's again transformational, and it brings us a lot of scale. And to take that scale and to drive margins that have been similar to how we've performed at Knight generates a tremendous amount of cash flow, right? And really free cash flow.
Yeah.
Where you have, once you've paid all your bills, paid your capital expenditures, you've got excess cash, and it's allowed us to invest in several companies, right? Really, since the merger with Swift, we bought Abilene Motor Express, we bought Hayes, which is a warehouse company, we've bought a small school up in Syracuse, New York, we've bought AAA. We bought
Elios, the technology
company.
Yeah.
We bought UTXL, a logistics company. Then recently MME or Midwest Motor Express. Most likely we wouldn't have been able to do that if we were just Knight, because we wouldn't have had the balance sheet, the cash flow to be able to
the buying power that goes
to be able to afford to do that. And so that has opened up a tremendous amount of doors for us. And then just the scale it's brought from even having 60,000 trailers.
Yeah.
There's huge advantages to having trailers in the market today. That's the most valuable asset right now in our space. And we leverage that for what we can do for our customers. We're leveraging it to grow our logistics business, where we're using our trailers, a Knight or a Swift trailer, and buying third-party capacity. So our customers have the benefit of drop and hook freight versus, the live load, live unload freight you get from a traditional broker. So it allows us to differentiate ourselves.
That's fantastic. Well, I know you were born and raised here. Went to ASU, which I love ASU. I was a native as well. Not a second generation, but a native. You've been in touch with, you've met a lot of people over the years, whether it's at ASU, growing up, even in your current workings with KnightSwift. Tell our listeners who along the way in Adam Miller's life was most influential for you in developing who you've become as an adult, as a leader, and then the second part of that question is, how do you utilize that now to influence others?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? There's so many people to pick from. I think, just from a personal level, obviously my parents were very influential. My mom was always one that, worked really hard. She was a nurse and worked nights and weekends when we were little. My parents were separated when I was young, and so, she was making it on her own. And taught us just what hard work was about, but also about doing the right thing, right? About being a good person. And my father, I spent a lot of time with him as well. And he always, was a very competitive person, right? Kind of drove like, hey, you've got to do your very best, right? And you want to win at what you're trying to accomplish, right? So melding those together to make sure that you're aggressive, you're competitive, but you do it the right way, right? You work hard, you don't cut corners, and you make sure you're a good person along the way. And then professionally, I mean, certainly Kevin Knight plays a big role in really anyone who worked here. Certainly in the earlier years, he was involved in everything, right? Had just intensity that was unbelievable. I remember when I first became the CFO, we didn't have the best month, and I remember how intense he was about the financial performance and what we needed to do to improve it. And it was all about accountability. And I just remember him just kind of giving me the business a little bit and just thinking to myself, how does my face look right now? Like where do I put my hands? I remember him looking at me like, are you okay? yeah, I'm just taking it right now, taking it all in, right? and then, hey, Dave Jackson was along for the ride, right? He took the brunt even earlier than I did, and so he's been very involved with my development and success, and many others. But again, it's just been great people here at both Knight and even at Swift now, like learning from people along the way of how you adapt to your environment and the fact that you've always got to be looking to strive to be better, and it's okay to make mistakes as long as you learn from them, adjust quickly, right? And so those be a few folks I'd call out.
That's great.
Well, we got a couple of fun questions too that we want to ask.
Okay.
So let's see if you can tell the listeners what are some of your favorite apps on your phone, and what are you watching on Netflix?
So apps. Well, my wife would say my email app, right? Because probably on that more than I should be when I'm at home. I'd say an app that gets kind of used up quite a bit would be my fantasy football app.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
And it's probably more for my son, who's critiquing all the moves I've made along the way. And on Sunday, after every play, let me look at your phone and let me see, did you get any points? Why did you start this person? Why don't you pick up this person? He's only 8, but he has gotten into it quite a bit. So when I look at my, you get that message every week, tells you your screen time. I'm like, oh my gosh, how much screen time do we have? And I look at it, it's pretty heavy on a Sunday. And so I think that's probably one that gets a lot of use, especially during football season.
Okay. Oh, for sure.
And what are you watching?
Well, so the shows, they may not be on Netflix. I just assume kind of what you're streaming. So a show called Succession. It's on HBO.
I don't know that one.
And it's a show that I think it's got like 3 seasons now. It's about a large public company that is really dominated by a family, and the father is kind of near the twilight of his career, and he's was giving it to his sons to take over. Then he took it back, and there's this power struggle of who's going to run the company, and you've got all the kids infighting to try to position themselves for power. So some of the stuff I watched firsthand, with the Swift merger, right? So I can relate to it, but it's actually been one that my wife's gotten into quite a bit as well. So I would check that one out if you haven't. I'd say another one would be Yellowstone.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good one, right? It's kind of gangster cowboys.
I watched that one.
That's how I describe it to someone who wasn't sure. I didn't know Kevin Costner could be a boss like that, but
there he is, killing it.
A mafia cowboy.
What's that?
A mafia cowboy.
I know. Yeah. Have you not seen it?
Yeah,
it's a good show.
No, it's so that I think that's one that we watch quite a bit. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There's a new Dexter.
Oh yeah.
That's come out, I think, on Showtime. So we've just started that, and the morning show on Apple TV.
I don't know that one at all.
Check that one out. That was one of their kind of first shows that they came out with. I think I'm on the 2nd or 3rd season, so that's been a good one as well.
So I learned two. There you go. Two that I got.
Add it to your list. Yeah.
Mark it down. You got a lot of free time, Linda. You can do that stuff.
Just tons.
Yeah. I don't have that kind of time. I got too many kids. But
well, I don't know if that's the case because we discussed this prior, and we're going to go ahead and run right into this.
Oh, you're going to talk about my ride along?
Uh-huh.
Even though we're here to talk about Adam's ride along.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about time. So I know I personally went on a few ride alongs, but they were never more than one day. How many did you go? You went on one recently?
Yeah, I just went on one recently, and it was overnight.
It was overnight, and tell us, Stabler.
Yes, I would love for all of our listeners to hear. So my ride along was roughly 7 days. It almost turned into 10.
Who has more time?
Before I had to get involved. Now, before we get into Adam's, I'm going to preface this by saying this. We went on mine very unscripted. Nobody knew. I just wanted to see exactly what these guys went through. And I felt like a milk run overnight to California or Vegas was something that, the average company person would want to do. A real quick and easy, hey, make sure we got to load there and back. I don't want anything going wrong. And so I figured, hey, if we're really going to get to know what our driving associates go through, we need somebody to experience it. So I did take time off, 7 days to do a ride along from Phoenix to Pensacola. And I had a notebook filled with notes, and there was some very frustrating things along the way. But let's go ahead and talk to Adam about his milk run to California.
I can appreciate that, though. That's a commitment to it. But
for sure.
Yeah, so I did the milk run, as Brett would say, to Vegas, right? But had a great driver. It was a driver who was with us at Swift in the early 90s and then went off and did, he had another career and decided to come back to trucking.
Oh, that's awesome.
He wanted to. So he'd been with us about a year at that time and was a mentor for us.
Okay.
Great guy. Named Lonnie, and we had good experience. Like I learned quite a bit. I had a page full of notes of just challenges, and one's just connecting to our equipment and how do you communicate back, which trailer you're picking up and dropping at the location. We had to red tag a trailer because we had the reefer unit that wasn't working, and then I remember coming in. We went to Costco up in Vegas, and we arrived at like 6 p.m. And the parking lot was just packed. The line for fuel was forever, and there's just cars swarming everywhere. And so we're trying to park because we're going to sleep in the back of Costco overnight because our load didn't deliver till about 4 a.m. So I couldn't believe how he was able to navigate. And there was already 2 Swift trucks parked back there.
Oh boy.
That were positioned to sleep overnight as well. So he like parallel parked this thing at the back of a Costco where there's all these pallets in the way. I mean, it was unbelievable. I couldn't have done it with my car, I don't think, right? And then we walked to go get something to eat and came back and slept in the truck. And, there's, a lot of noise, right?
Yeah. And
we had the reefer unit there, so you can hear the rumbling throughout the night. And but you know what? I slept better than I thought.
Yeah.
I think the mattress that we have is very comfortable. That was much better than I was anticipating. Better than camping, put that way.
Which we know you don't care for.
Yeah,
So that's a good thing.
Yes, yeah, I did that. That was my dad called vacation when we were younger. I'm not sure. Maybe I should do that for our kids. But I think sleeping on rocks and going to pick up sticks and try to burn them, I don't call that vacation. But so we delivered at kind of 4 a.m. And hey, the folks there at Costco were great. I mean, they allowed us to use the amenities.
Oh, that's good.
I can't imagine if they didn't. I mean, that's a tough place. You're stuck in a parking lot. If you don't have a restroom, I don't know what you do.
Where do you go? Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a real issue. And I was glad they were accommodating there. And then we headed off at 4 a.m, got something to eat at a casino along the way that allowed for truck parking, and then we showered at a truck stop as a pilot. And the showers were much better than I thought.
Yeah.
I felt the same way.
Yeah, I've had worse showers in hotels.
Yes. They were incredibly clean, and they smelled like bleach. It was really nice.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, and then we were on our way back. So, but no, it was great. I saw some of the challenges with maybe how we have our equipment spec'd in terms of the power we have going up grades. And so there's a lot of things that we're working on to maybe improve that for our drivers. And then the technology inside the cab, I think there's some room for improvement there and just creating better workflow. So it was a great experience.
How was the communication on the truck with your driving associate and with Lonnie and
Well, I think for one, his driver leader was fantastic,
that's
right?
good.
And so he worked really well with her. And Lonnie's a guy who's kind of easygoing. He's low maintenance. I looked at his safety score. It's like a 0. I'm like, are you sure? Is this thing even turned on? And he's, never has any issues. Earns every bonus every month. So he does a great job. I think, we have some things to work on. I think navigation was one that there's, some room to improve upon. And I know the folks that we work with on the in-cab device are working diligently on that. I think we were making some improvements kind of every week along the way. And so I think that was maybe one of the frustration points that where they just kind of defer to using their phone if the navigation isn't as interactive or dynamic as they'd like it to be. So
for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. I loved going on mine. So.
Yeah, we didn't film it because I couldn't compete with Linda, who's got 17 million views on hers now.
Yeah, I don't know how. I think Linda paid somebody to actually promote her video. Look at me,
she's
everybody.
paying for clicks,
on the Google.
Yeah,
paying for viewers and whatever.
That's funny. No, I am not. I am not. They just genuinely like me.
Well, there's a lot of places I could have gone with that, but I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
Yes, please do.
They do like
please
you.
Do.
They do. I think that they all think you're wonderful, and as we do. So thank you, Linda, for being so great.
Here we go.
Anyway, talk to our audience a little bit about automated trucks, autonomous, where we're headed, electric trucks, what that looks like in the industry.
Will there ever be a driverless truck?
Are drivers at risk for losing jobs because these trucks can drive themselves?
Yeah. The answer is no. So I've been on several rides in autonomous trucks, and the technology is great, right? And it works really great when you're on a highway cruising at 65 miles an hour with not a lot of distraction or issues to deal with, right? I think the equipment, the technology has probably solved 95% of what you're going to encounter, again, on a highway.
Yeah.
Right? Which, when you talk to drivers, is the easiest part of the job. Not saying really any part of the job is the easiest, but that's when there's low stress, right? And so I think the technology will allow for the equipment to take over and probably perform most of the mundane tasks that you have similar to a pilot when a plane is just kind of cruising at altitude. And so I think there's a lot of room for that technology to improve the driving job and to make it safer for our drivers.
Yeah.
Because it can view, several hundred, sometimes 1,000 yards ahead and can make adjustments, if they see things on the road. Challenge is that to try to get to the next 5% is very difficult, very expensive, maybe impossible, right? And so that's the issue with the technology in terms of taking a driver out of the truck. Now, what the technology doesn't address is backing, which last I checked is pretty important
probably
in
the most
transportation.
important part.
Our drivers have gone, have backed probably more miles than I've gone forward in my car, right? And so that's where the skill comes in, right? And the technology is not there to maneuver through, congested cities, which is where all the stress is for drivers. And again, where all the skill is.
Right.
So there's a long ways to go for that technology to develop. But do I feel like we can utilize that technology in our trucks in the future? Yeah, but not to take the driver out, but to improve the jobs for our drivers. And then on electric trucks, we're investing in them, but they're not applicable to a lot of what we do. The range is very short, right? Where you may have a truck that may do 100 to 150 miles a day. And we know that our length of haul is much longer than that, and our drivers drive much longer than that.
Right.
The weight, it adds a lot of weight to the truck, and so
burns the batteries quicker.
Well, it creates an issue with how much freight you can haul because of the weight, and the cost is still really high. And so it wouldn't pencil out from a return standpoint. But that technology will get better over time. And so we'll be on the forefront of that. I mean, given the scale that we have, we're partnering with different OEMs, and we're investing in a few electric trucks in Southern Cal this coming year. Again, they wouldn't probably work economically today, but we're going to learn from the technology. And you have certain states that offer grants, like California, but others don't. But that technology will develop, and I think ultimately will lead to a cleaner truck, one that could be eventually zero emissions. But it's going to take time to get there.
Yeah.
Right. Sure. Yeah. Wow. Well, I just had a driver in my office yesterday talking about just this thing, and my my statement to him was, "Do you fly?" And he's like, "Yeah." "So you fly commercial?" He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "And how many times you got on a plane where there's no pilot? You go in a commercial plane, not only is there one, but there's two. So how many have you flown in without a pilot?" And he's like, "None, but they have autopilot. They don't need the pilot. So why do they bring the pilot?" And he's like, I get it. And I said, yeah, so just think of that in trucking. You're still going to need that driver to help make those maneuvers that the technology can't do. So he felt a little bit more comfortable, but he was pretty stressed out.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, you see all the news, you see, the headlines about pulling drivers out. But again, I've seen the technology. We have a partnership with one of the technology providers today that's working on it, and we're helping kind of steer how this can apply to our space and how you'd roll it out. But again, we're going to need drivers. They're going to be critical. But again, I get the technology can help improve the job for our drivers.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Right. All right. So tell us, what are some common misconceptions in the transportation industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the common conceptions is that we're just a bunch of truckers who don't know how to use technology, and that you're going to have these tech startups that are going to come in and Uberize trucking, right? That's what you all hear. And hey, you got some out there, stating that they're working on doing it or trying to do it. And so I think what many miss is when you think of what Uber did to the taxi cab industry, okay? They disrupted it, no doubt. And they've got an application that makes it very convenient. Yep. But the way they disrupted it was by bringing what feels like an endless amount of capacity to the taxi industry space. Because how many people have vehicles they don't use all the time?
Yeah.
Almost everybody, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So almost anybody could be an Uber driver if they wanted to, if they wanted the ability, the flexibility to make some extra money.
Right.
Right. And so that's why you saw costs drive down, and they created a great app that connects, someone, a rider versus with a Uber driver, and they made that seamless. And so I think there's people who feel like, oh, this applies to trucking. The one misconception is they're not bringing any trucks. They're not bringing any drivers, right? No trailers. And there's not too many people who have a Class 8 truck sitting in their driveway going, I wonder what I'm going to do with this today. Right? And so that's the difference. And in our space, it's made up of large shippers and a very fragmented amount of trucking companies, right? Very small trucking companies. I think more than 50% of capacity is made up of trucking companies with less than 50 trucks. So there's always been brokers in our space that are connecting large shippers with small carriers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
A lot of it was manual way back, as C.H. Robinson, been doing it for 100 years. But in the mid-90s, you had, Internet Truck Stop that connected on the internet. Yes, truckers know how to use the internet, and we've been doing it for a while. We have computers too, with, matching up where brokers post loads, they match up shippers with carriers. And so we've been doing this for a long time. And so you've had these technology companies come in and say they're going to go fix our industry. And some have really scaled revenue, but they've done it in a way by just lowering the price, but not even close to profitability, and not a sustainable business model.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think long term, I don't see those businesses lasting in our industry.
Sure.
But I think that's one of the frustrating things you hear is that these are companies that come in and apply the Uber model to transportation, to trucking.
I love that you said these tech companies trying to save the day.
Right.
Because they got technology.
At the end of the day, you bring value to shippers by having a truck, having a driver, and having trailers available. And again, that's where we bring 60,000 trailers. That's a huge deal.
Yeah.
There's so much value we provide to our customers. Because, we have a logistics company that's making those connections, and we have a platform that we've developed to connect carriers and shippers, or carriers, and shippers. You want that. You need that. You need to make that transaction as seamless or frictionless as possible. And so some of these tech companies have helped develop that and have kind of cleared a pathway for that. But you have to have access to the capacity to really make it work.
Yep.
All right, Adam, I think our listeners would be interested to know what's the current state of the trucking industry?
That's a great question. Probably at the most unique time we've maybe ever been in our industry. When you think about how we got to this point, you can't turn on the news without talking about, backlog at supply chain. I think it's in every earnings release you see from companies about, blaming inflation on the, supply chain issues or lack of sales. When the pandemic hit in early 2020, our industry was in a tough spot already, and we'd seen capacity coming out because rates were relatively depressed because we probably oversupplied the industry in 2018, and so there was a lot of pressure on capacity because rates weren't nearly as strong. And then when the pandemic hits, and then we stimulate the economy, you saw a pretty significant shift of consumer dollars that would have been spent on maybe leisure or travel shift to goods. Mm-hmm. And because capacity was already constrained, and now you saw this demand ramp up, we overwhelmed the supply chain. We couldn't catch up. Mm-hmm. And when stores started opening back up, because I know for a period of time was kind of scary. You had stores shutting down, and we saw volumes fall off dramatically, and a lot of truckers left the industry because of that. And then it came back on in probably June and July. We've been extremely tight ever since. It's tighter than we've ever seen it. And we always think of like fourth quarter as the period of time where demand outpaces supply, and you have acute tightness. We've been in fourth quarter really since the third quarter of 2020, right? And it's just continued on. It's probably gotten tighter every quarter since. And so it's gonna take probably a long time to dig out of this, longer than these cycles typically occur, because one of the challenges is demand remains strong, but capacity can't come into the space. Typically, when spot rates are as high as they are, customers are willing to pay more to get capacity. You see a lot of small truckers add trucks, right? Or even large truckers try to add trucks. Yep. The issue is you don't have labor. You can't find labor in every industry. You can't think of an industry out there that doesn't have a challenge in labor right now.
Right. Everyone's hiring.
Yeah.
And hey, our space has always had a challenge with hiring drivers, and it's even worse than it's ever been. But then you also think about equipment. Our OEMs can't build trucks. There's 50 microchips in every truck, and they can't find them. And so every day we've talked to some of the leaders of these OEMs, and it's like they got teams of people working with brokers every day to figure out how many chips they can buy. We've never been in a position where we're saying we want to order this many trucks, and they say, "Sorry, this is the only amount we can build for you." So that's led to a lot of companies keeping trucks longer, which means they're not selling them in the used equipment market, which is where a lot of small carriers that's where they grow, is by buying used trucks, because they're a lot less expensive than new trucks. And today, because there's no supply of used trucks, the prices of what is available are extremely high. I mean, there are used trucks that are 4-year-old trucks with 450,000 miles on them that are selling for what they cost brand new.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of small guys that can't cover that. So there's this supply challenge of coming into the space to help offset where demand is. And even on the trailer front, you have trailer manufacturers that can't build trailers, right? They can't get raw materials. There's not microchips on it, but there's raw materials, there's tires, there's wiring harnesses. There's the issue can be new every day of what holds that up. And so that's been one of the reasons why this, call it cycle, because we always deal with cycles, is going to be elongated. And really, I think 2022 is kind of baked as that's going to be, we'll see strength really throughout. And then we'll see what happens in 2023. That could be where you start to see the market come back in balance. And for us, we're trying to invest in capacity, but we're doing it in maybe different ways than we have in the past, where before it's like you tried to grow trucks, and that's been a real issue because, again, everything I noted about buying new trucks and labor, which is the biggest issue. But we're leveraging our trailer fleet more than we ever have, and that's why we're seeing significant growth in logistics. Where most logistics companies out there, the brokers, saw volumes up mid-single digits year over year, 4 or 5%, while our volumes were up 60%. Because we're approaching it differently. We're bringing more value to the supply chain because of the drop and hook nature of what we can provide with our trailers. And then we're going to grow with intermodal as well, with investing in containers. And so, we're built for these type of markets. I think we're a very nimble business, although we may be very large. We have very unique brands that remain very nimble, and our departments read the market data. We adjust our strategy. We're always trying to anticipate what's coming down the road over the next 6 to 12 months. And we've got a lot of experience in that. And I think we'll position ourselves to do a great job for our customers, provide capacity where we can, but also, generate good margins and returns for our shareholders.
What do you think about the ports and the problems we have right now with all of the containers and ships out there? I know that a lot of people see the news. They see the aerial views of hundreds of ships outside every port. It seems like across the western and eastern seaboard. How do we even begin to...
There's no silver bullet there. I mean, that's a real issue. It's a real issue. And again, I mean, demand has just outpaced what we can do from a supply standpoint. And so, we've partnered with some of our customers who've done some very innovative things of building some container yards right near the port so they can get containers in and out very quickly. It's just going to take time to work through the log jam that's there right now, and it's quite honestly hasn't gotten any better. I mean, there's still a ton of ships out there, and then they push some of them out even further out to sea. But hey, we're gonna work through with our port team, with our Knight team, Swift team. They all work hand in hand to try to find solutions for our customers to do what we can to deliver goods, especially for the holidays. And we've made some good progress there, but there's still a lot of backlog that'll need to be worked through. And then I think even for our customers, having inventory on hand will be critical. Now, some of the large shippers have made a lot of progress there, but sometimes it's you have inventory, you may not have the right inventory. Some of our customers today are just getting their Halloween stuff. So you might see some Halloween costumes on sale here soon. So
Christmas in July could be an actual thing.
But hey, we're trying to partner with all of our customers to do the best we can to get through it. But again, there's no silver bullet.
Cool. Where do you see KnightSwift 5, 10, 15 years from now? 20 years?
Well, 15 is anyone's guess, right? But here's what I'd say is we are investing in the diversification of our revenue. If I look back, even 2 years ago, 80% of our revenue came from full truckload business, right? That'd be what Knight does, Swift does, bar none. We had a logistics business that was smaller, an intermodal business that was smaller that we inherited from Swift. We want probably our truckload business to be closer to 50% of what we do. Not because we want to shrink that. We want to continue to grow and build out our terminal network, which we have plans to do. But we feel there's an opportunity to grow in our logistics business very rapidly. Again, growing with trailers so we can provide power-only opportunities, so we can support third-party carriers who want access to drop and hook freight. And we can support them by also helping them with maintaining their equipment, selling insurance to them, getting them fuel discounts. And so that'll allow us to grow that logistics business very quickly. And it'll outpace what we do on the truckload side. And then intermodal, we've got some structural changes coming along with our rail partners. One we're excited about is we're going to be working with the Union Pacific starting January 1st, and we think that's going to give us a great opportunity to grow that business, invest in containers. We'll provide a better service for our customers and be able to generate returns that justify investment in that business. And so, again, we expect that to grow to $1 billion plus. But LTL is an area that we were very excited about. We wanted to get in. We've been talking about it because I think we've seen this explosion in LTL freight because of just what's happened with e-commerce over the years. And, the pandemic, led to that, evolving even further, right, or even faster. Mm-hmm. And so we were able to find an LTL company in AAA Cooper and made an acquisition this year. And then just recently did another one with Midwest Motor Express. And so now LTL represents, on a pro forma basis, about 14% of our revenue. And we're not done there. Our goal is to build out a nationwide LTL service. And so there's a couple pockets in the Northeast we need to cover, in the Southwest that we still need to do some work on. And so as you grow LTL, as you grow intermodal, you grow logistics. And then we have some other services that I mentioned earlier, like selling insurance to small carriers, providing maintenance through our Iron Truck Service Network, and truck sales. I mean, a lot of things that we're doing that provides kind of what we call carrier service revenue that are very different than what we do today on truckload, and aren't subject to the same whims of the volatility that comes with truckload. So it creates less volatility in growth as well as earnings. And so that's where I see it as a very diversified transportation company versus being viewed as a pure full truckload player.
Well, I know you got a question, but
go ahead.
So on that, which I love. So when are we going to start seeing the New York Stock Exchange, and these investment bankers and these analysts recognizing that we are more than just a truckload company?
I think it's starting already. I mean, we've seen a nice lift in our stock over the last really 6 months, really starting with AAA Cooper. And, our earnings release that we put out for third quarter, we received, I do a lot of calls with analysts, so does Dave and another gentleman on our team, Brad Stewart. And I'd say the lion's share of the questions were about these other segments, logistics, intermodal. They're scratching their head. How are you doing this? Because the way we're approaching it so differently. And then we're talking about some of the other services we're providing, how that grows as a percentage of what we do. And that was the first time that they were really focused on that. Usually we're having to talk about that, bring that up as a subject. We did phenomenal in truckload, industry leading, and got very few questions about it. So the narrative is starting to turn. So it takes time. And so we just have to execute what we say we're going to do, right? Which we've been doing. And now we've got to improve our, grow these businesses, see that they see, we need to show that we can do this LTL. We just, bought two companies, and we've got to figure out how they work together and improve margins and grow top line at the same time. And as we do that, as we demonstrate that we're living up to what we're communicating, I'm confident we'll see the stock price react.
Yeah,
That's
for
cool.
sure.
It's really cool.
I'm excited. I can't wait for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where we go from there, for sure.
Yep.
Well, do you want to leave us with a last parting
Sure.
message to our drivers?
Yeah.
And all drivers, not just Knight, not just Swift, or this is all trucking?
Yeah. I'd say, for one, I just have so much respect and gratitude for the men and women who've chosen this career. I mean, we've never seen such a beacon of light on the supply chain, over the last, 18 months like we have. And I think people are recognizing the value that drivers bring to our economy. Right? When you go down a grocery store aisle and see the shelves are empty, that's scary. Most of us had never experienced that.
Right.
I remember when I was on vacation when really that pandemic hit, and we had cleared out a refrigerator before we left. And so we were flying back, and I was scared. Are we going to have food? Are we going to be able to go to the store? And for these men and women to step up and go out in a very uncertain time. We didn't know a lot about COVID-19 then, but they were still willing to go out and put themselves in harm's way to deliver for our customers and really for the economy, for America. And I'm forever in their gratitude. I'm forever grateful for that. And hey, we'd love for them to work for Knight or Swift or one of our other brands, but if they choose to work for another, we respect them regardless. And hey, we just love what they do, and our job is to support drivers the best we can. And that's really what we talk about. Like, we're all everyone in the office, we're there to make their lives as easy as possible and to make them as successful as possible. And we have to always reiterate that to our people.
For sure.
Yep.
We agree with that statement. I know Linda does. We all do, especially during that pandemic. So thank you for that statement. And thank you for being here with us today. If you're watching, you know that Dave Jackson said he's wicked smart. He's also got wickedly nice hair. So if you can see this man who's probably in his 40s, I'm not going to guess, but I'm just going to say in his 40s, stressful job. Look at that. It's dark. It's full. It's wonderful. Look at mine. And I don't even have near the stress this guy does. So, Adam, thank you for being with us. One of the good
things I got from my parents, I guess. Yeah.
Great genes right there. Yeah. Great genes. But we appreciate you being here. We appreciate all of our listeners and those of you that are watching. On behalf of Linda, I'm Brett. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.
Thanks.
See you. Bye.
We enjoyed bringing this show to you, and we hope you had fun along the way, too. We're going 10-10 for now, but you can catch us on the side on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Beyond the Rig and Drive Knight. Until next time, be safe out there and keep trucking.